Hello everyone, welcome to today's video where we will do some vibe coding with the FixedIT Data Agent and the Axis cameras. So the goal we are going to pursue today is to create a integration for the FixedIT QR code scanner, which we see in action here. So we can see that we have different labels on different packages here. And by running the FixedIT QR code decoder, the camera can automatically detect and scan these labels. And what we want to do now is that we want to create an automated FTP upload. So we want to have an FTP server running somewhere, and anytime there is a QR code detected in the image, we should upload a snapshot of that image to a folder that is named after the QR code. So that will mean that we can easily find all the images of a specific packet by going into the folder of the QR code that is on that package. So I think that's enough for an introduction. The way we're going to do this is that we're going to use the application platform in the camera. So here we can install third-party applications. And the easiest way to create your own third-party application for the camera is to use the FixedIT Data Agent. So this is an application that you can install in your camera, which allows you to upload your own configuration files and script files that will run inside the camera. So everything apart from the FTP server will run directly inside the camera. So the only thing I've done so far is to install the FixedIT QR code decoder and install the FixedIT Data Agent and activate them with one license each. All other applications here you can just ignore, they are not important for this use case. And then next thing we're going to do is that we're going to use our example repository. So you can use whatever code editor you like to. I use Cursor AI. It's a code editor with a lot of AI integrations that makes it really easy to vibe code and use agents to create things. But you can, for example, use Claude if you prefer that instead, or essentially any other code editor that you like to use. And the important thing to make this work is that you should get our FixedIT Data Agent examples repository that is available on GitHub and download that file structure and open it in your context in your code editor. This means that the agent can see a lot of different examples of how we are doing things in different projects, but it can also find this agents.md file. So agents.md is a magic name which all these AI code editors will look for, and when they find a file called that, they will read it to expand their context. And what we have done in this file here is that we have specified not only documentation about how the data agent works, but also all the other components in a system like this. We explain to the AI agent what an Axis camera is, what an ACAP application running in the Axis camera is, how the whole system works together, how it is typically used together with other kind of systems, and so forth. So this gives the data agent, it gives the AI agent all the context to know how things can be implemented. So the idea now is that we just need to tell our AI agent what we want to do, and it will do it for us. But before we dive into these things here, the first thing I wanted to do is to set up an FTP server where we can store our images. And it doesn't really matter how you set up your FTP server. If you're on Windows, there are different ways of doing it. The easiest way I found to do it was to use this Docker image, sFTP go. So I can just run one single command here and it will start a server. And now I can access the FTP server in my web browser. Let's open it up in an external browser here. So the first time I need to create an admin user. And the second thing we need to do is to create a folder where we want to upload all our images from the camera. So we just create a new folder here. I'm going to call it cameras. And we're going to set a path where it should store it. In my case, I'm just going to store it in the temp partition because I don't really care about this long term. So now we have that folder set up. The second thing we need to do is that we need to add a user that our cameras can log in as. So create this user and remember the password for it so you can use it later. And now we can instead open the client view of the of this FTP server. So let's try logging in with a CAM user account. And here we can now see that we have the ability to upload files. So it's just a regular FTP server. So this didn't really have anything to do with the access camera. So let's go back to the access camera now and start working on this use case. So I'm going to create a new folder in the data agent examples. I could create it somewhere else as long as you have this in the context so the agent can see the other examples. And now I'm going to ask the agent to create this application for us. So I'm going to keep it quite simple, focus on the use case description. I think the agent can figure out the technical details of it. So this is essentially all the basic things the AI agent needs to know to create this. Since we already have other examples in this repository using the FixedIT QR code decoder, it will directly know how to consume these detections. So we don't need to worry about that. And hopefully it will find the right plugin to use to upload images to an FTP server, and it will also find another example of how to get an image snapshot from the camera. So we can see now how it's digging through other examples and looking at how we are doing similar things there. And now we see that it's starting to create different configuration files here. So we have an config agent, which seems to be just global settings. I'm not sure about what this is or what it used this for, but we'll see. Seems like this is just unrelated test files that it's creating, so let's ignore those. So typical what we see is that it will, one of the benefits with the data agent is that the framework it builds on can be run on your host computer, and that is really helpful for the data or for the AI agents, because they can create small configuration files and then they run them on your own computer to test if they are working. And if it doesn't know how to do something, it will run small experiments. So that's what we saw here, that it created a temp folder where it just ran a bunch of experiments. So let's look on the files that it has here in the sFTP upload project. So we have a file called access image consumer. This is a little bit of a complicated file due to how we need to get the images in binary format. But it's probably just copy pasted from another project, so I think this is just fine to use. And then we have this one, which is the config input barcode. So this is the one that is actually reading QR code detections from the FixedIT QR code decoder application. And this is also taken from another project, probably where we do a similar thing. So this should be fine as it is. And here we see the interesting part. Now it have added an output to upload to. The name here is a bit confusing. So it's named it config output FTP, but actually what it seems to be is the snapshot upload. So this one will run a script. It seems like it decided to run a script and use curl to upload the image. This might work, but it will probably work, but I don't think it's the nicest solution for doing this. And the way to find out this is look at Telegraph, the framework that we are using, and look at what plugins they are available. You can also find this in the Data Agent manual. And there is one plugin called Remote File. So if we switch to that one, I think we can get a much simpler and more robust solution. Let's just try it like this. And perhaps it will actually respond with some reason why we can't use this plugin, but I don't think why we wouldn't be able to use it, so I would much prefer to do that. Using shell scripts is always more complicated. It gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of power, but it's more complicated, and it increases the risk for bugs. So it's always better to depend as much as possible on the built-in plugins in the Data Agent and in Telegraph. So now we see that it's creating a new output plugin here instead. And you see this is much easier. Instead of that whole shell script, we just get this single output plugin, which uses the remote file output. We tell it that it should use FTP. We give it some information about the FTP server. Here it says the file name. So it will be the file name prefix tag. We actually see up here, so FTP path / file name prefix / UTC timestamp. So I think what I forgot to tell it is that we want to use the decoded value as a folder. So let's see if it can fix that for us. So it seems like now it's using a tag called file name prefix to decide the name of the folder, and then it just used the timestamp of the image to name the actual JPEG file. So let's take a look at how we're actually getting the QR code value. So it seems like it has also created some deduplication, because we will get multiple scans of the QR code every second while the QR code is available. So we could upload all those images, but it would be a lot of waste. So what it's done here is to create some kind of script that is looking at the last decoded QR value. So if the QR value haven't changed, then it won't upload a new image. So I think that makes a lot of sense. It also seems to have some cooldown period, meaning that if the image is, or the QR code is in the image for too long time, it will take a new one, but not multiple times per second. So let's see, have it created any README file for us? So it's created a long, extensive README file here, explaining what it is doing, how it is working. Let's see if we can also see the visualization here. So it consumes the QR code decoder through the Unix socket. This is the standard way we do it. So this is how it is reading the QR codes from the other application. And then it uses a starlock script that we just looked at to remove multiple triggers if we see the same QR code in the frame multiple times in a row. We're then using an XCD processor to actually run a script that fetches a JPEG image. And then we are using the remote file plugin to upload this image to the FTP server using the name of the scanned image. So let's see if it has an instruction for us how to enable these. Quick setup, install the two ACAP applications in the camera. We already done that. Set data agent parameters, Vapix username, Vapix password. So this is since we are getting the image over Vapix, the data agent will need to know the username and password to access the image. So we can configure that under variables in the data agent. We could and probably should create a more low privileged user. It would be enough to create a user with just viewer permission just to get the image. But for now, I'm just going to use the default user we have in camera. Second thing is that it wants us to set some extra environment variables. So we have the FTP host, FTP user, FTP pass, FTP path. So I don't want to set all these parameters, so we're just going to ask it to set defaults except for the secrets, which we will use Telegraph secret store for. So we need to add some Telegraph secrets now. So FTP host, and these are also added here in the application variables, Telegraph secret, FTP host, and that will be my IP address of my own computer where I'm running the FTP server. And FTP user. So this is the user that we created in the FTP server. And FTP pass. So that's the 3 secrets that we need. And these are optional, so we don't need to care about those. For having the FTP port as a secret also, so let's move that together with these variables so they are all collected in one single place. And FTP port normally you would have port 21 or 22, depending on if you use FTP or sFTP. But I think we might have another port configured here. See if we can find. I have forgotten what port I started it at. Looks like we're running it on port 2022. So we have all the FTP configuration details configured. So we have 2 different shell scripts and 1 starlock file that we need to upload. And we will do that under files. So the first thing I will do is to disable all these bundled configuration files because we're not going to use them and they might interfere with our project. Second thing is that we're going to select upload helper files. And let me just do this outside the window because I don't want to share the screen showing all my files. Okay, so now I have selected the first one, which is this qrddap.star file, this one here, and we're going to upload this one. So we see it's available now as an uploaded helper file. And we're going to add another helper file. And in this case, we're going to upload the 2 shell scripts, barcode snapshot handler. And whenever uploading a shell script that should be executed, you should typically click the make executable. And the last file is access image consumer.shell, which also should be make executable. So that was the helper files. And then we have the configuration file, so we have the global configuration. So now we click upload config instead of upload helper file because these config files is what actually tells the data agent to use or to run. These other helper files are just files that you're referencing from within your configuration files. So the config agent, and we can enable this one directly, and then we have the config input barcode. Config input barcode, and let's enable that one directly. And then we have the config process ddap.conf. And then we have the config process capture. And finally, we have the config output remote file.conf. And if you think it's annoying to upload all these different files, then you can just write everything in one file. It's just easier to keep track of the modularity of it if you have multiple files. And you can also create a script that just combines them before uploading them so that you just need to upload one file even though you keep the main sources in different files. So now everything is uploaded, it's enabled, it's already running. So let's take a look in the logs. And it seems like we have unknown secret for this one. So let's just copy paste this. So here it's adding a new configuration file that just tells it that we should use a key set, or we always need to do that before we can use it. So let's start by uploading this one and enable it. Let's see if it's making any other changes that we need to upload. Seems like this one we also need to re-upload again since it did changes there. And all the other changes, it just seems to be to a README file. So let's check the logs again. And now it seems like we have no more errors in the log. Seems like we have some debug messages. It's probably just because it's enabled debugging. Now we get a new error here about FTP not being recognized in the output. we need to use sFTP instead of FTP. So this just is a simple change in one of the configuration files here. So let's upload a new remote config file. Now we're getting an error, input too short when revealing password, is it obscured? And see if this works better. Yeah, seems like we don't have any errors anymore. So we should still not have any files here in our FTP because we haven't had any images with QR codes yet. Oh, here we actually get a new error now. Creating remote fail, new file system couldn't connect. So we could create an input variable for this, but I'm just going to have it change it in the configuration file instead. And we can just re-upload this configuration file. So the problem was that we're trying to upload to a directory, a root directory that we didn't have in our FTP server. So now we're actually using the name that we set here on our server. Seems like it might get the same problem again. So let's actually tell it to test it. So this is one of the beauties with the FixedIT Data Agent, that all the Telegraph configuration files that you create, you can run local on host. The only thing you need to think about is that if you're creating shell scripts, then natively this doesn't run on Windows, but you can install a shell utility in Windows 2 that allows you to run them also locally. So that is really the benefit of doing it this way, because the AI agent can try it out itself, and instead of you having to copy paste things back and forth, it can just run a few experiments to figure out what's working and what doesn't. Might be set up something directly in the FTP server. So if I'm my user, let's try anyone. I think we need to specify something else here. Oh, that's not right. Okay, that's weird. That's a retrieve report. I guess I should try to use different port usually. It might be easier. So this seems to be one issue. Maybe we define a folder to use cloud upload. Folders. Let me do like this. And let's do the same for the user using the camera. Okay, now it seems like we're having more luck. Let's see what the logs are saying. Seems fine in the logs too. Let's just wait for the response from the agent. Yeah, I think we can stop that one, and hopefully then it should work now. So if I lift up this QR code, there we have a detection. Box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the information in it. No errors in the log so far. And now I have the folder cameras, and look at this. Here I got box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have the image. Look at this. So we managed to capture one image of that. Let's go back here, and if we now hold up this one, we should get a detection with cam 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And look at this. Now it's uploaded. So I would say this was quite a quick way of creating a custom application. I'm sure it probably took an hour or so for me to get everything working, but to create an Edge application from scratch in 1 hour is really not a lot of work. And the good thing now is that now we have all these files. Now we know how to do these things. So it's a little bit more time intensive than if you would use some drag and drop tool if that was available. But the main difference now is that this is completely flexible. We can do whatever we want to do. We just have a bunch of code files and configuration files and scripts that are running, and we can customize anything we want to customize. So for example, the did application here that it added for us uses the logic that if the code is the same, then we don't save it again unless some time window have passed. I'm not exactly sure. Let's ask you about this. So the flexibility is really the amazing thing here. And everything is scalable. Once we have these files, we can just combine them to one single file, which means that it's just a matter of minutes to upload it to a new camera. All right, so we have the default environment variable somewhere that says that every 30 seconds we should upload a new image. So I think if we put this one here, we should get one new image now directly. And then we should get one new image uploaded every 30 seconds. Here is the new image. So in 30 seconds, a new image should be uploaded. So it's quite a nice way of doing the rate limiting in this way that it did for us. And the cool thing is that we didn't even ask for it. It just understood directly that this QR code decoder will give us multiple detections every second, and it wouldn't make sense to upload every single image. So I think this was everything for this project. I think just this feature alone that we implemented now is very useful for logistics, for manufacturing, in a lot of different situations, even access control. This could be very, very useful. But the real power of it is that it's just a bunch of small scripted files that runs in the camera. So you can really customize it in any way you want to. And with help of an AI agent, it took us 1 hour to create this Edge application. If we want to do something else, if we want to create automation workflows, if we want to create customized integrations, bridging data between different applications. All this is possible with just an hour or so of vibe coding and the data agent running directly in the Access camera. And now nothing else is needed than the Access camera with the Edge application, since everything runs in the Edge device. That's everything that is needed. In this case, of course, also the FTP server, since that is what we want to upload to. But we could easily store the files in the camera if we want to do that, but it would, of course, have limited storage. So flexibility is really the key benefit of the FixedIT Data Agent. So I hope this vibe coding guide was useful for you to show how easy it is to vibe code with a data agent, how I usually go ahead, how I ask it to test things on host so it can integrate quickly before I then copy it to the camera and run it there. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned. We have a lot of more cool projects coming. So follow us on LinkedIn, FixedIT Consulting, and on YouTube, FixedIT Consulting. Thank you for watching.